Hello, everyone. My name is Chelsea, and welcome to the United World Week podcast. Our theme this time is interculture and dialogue, and we're very excited today to have Maddie with us. So maybe she can briefly introduce herself. Welcome, Maddie.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Chelsea. I am Maddie Maltese. I am a journalist. I worked for 11 years in the United States and I covered politics, economics, and finance. But I also the representative of Humanity NGO of the Focolare Movement at the UN headquarters in New York.
Thank you so much for being with us today, and we'll get right into the questions. So, in addition to your work as a journalist, you're also a representative for the New Humanity NGO at the United World Nations, dealing with several strategic issues from environmental protection to peace, from international security to financing for development, as well as youth policies and the impact of artificial intelligence. Can you tell us a bit more about your work and your experience?
So the experience at the UN, I think, is really fascinating in the sense that you have the opportunity to work and to meet with people from all over the world. And when I enter there, I have the impression that the United Nations is not the house of the states, but is the house of the people. And when you switch the level, in a certain sense, there is a lot in common. For example, no, you mentioned about artificial intelligence. 2 years ago, Humanity organized a side event together with the Policy mission related to artificial intelligence. More than 20 representatives from states were present to listen, but most of all to understand ethical guidelines in which way to address this new, I want to say, tool that can help humanity to develop, but also that can have some risks. And they felt that NGO, faith-based organization, can offer a perspective. So is the beauty of working there. Also inside the Multi-Faith Advisory Council is a special council that was I want to say was created more than 10 years ago by Professor Azakaram. She saw also with several data that faith-based organizations provide 80% of social services in the world. And she said, how is possible that the UN is just a place and the space for the states and the representatives of the states and not for religions, representative of religion? So this Multi-Faith Advisory Council is a great space in which voices of religious leaders can be heard. For example, during the pandemic, I remember there was a meeting with the representative of several UN agencies. And you know very well the guideline that the WHO provided for our communities, washing our hands, keep social distance. And then there was a religious leader from Nigeria. Still, this image is still staying with me. And he said, oh, these guidelines are perfect for the Western world. My community has no drinkable water. Social distance when in one room we have 15 people living together. And then, was a wake up call for the UN agencies and said, let's look at that deeply. And then, what about the post pandemic? They were looking for a new way also of interaction, a new way, for example, to work. And I remember with Humanity NGO, we proposed to have training for jobs, and now can be done also remotely. But the population is not well formed. Instead of providing only medical assistance, what about that? But our voice there is also a prophetic voice because we are guided by a divine choice. We are serving humanity. We are not there acting for our own interest. We are there really with this notion of serving. And then for this, we have responsibility. Also, when we are face to face with the Secretary General, when we are face to face with some member states, and they listen, sometimes officially, let's say in front of the TV, they cannot take a different position from their states. But then in private, they support us, they encourage us. I remember there was a campaign with Amnesty International that we call it Unmuted, because after the pandemic, there was a sort of keeping all the NGOs aside or provide just a few spots for them in the assembly, in the ECOSOC assembly, like reducing the participation from the grassroots organization. And instead, with this campaign, we started being louder about our will to be part of the conversation. And I remember officially some states abstained during the vote in the General Assembly, but before the vote, they came in our room with all the NGOs and they encouraged us. Don't give up, continue to insist, and we will support you. And support meant, for example, pay for us the room at the UN. As you know, many states are not providing funds, but some of them still believe in the multilateralism. And this multilateralism cannot exclude also the voice of faith-based organization.
Wow, that is really inspiring. And from this unique and meaningful perspective, do you think that the method of dialogue and the horizon of fraternity are still relevant and understood in their full potential?
So the issues today is not whether dialogue and fraternity are understood. It's whether they are practiced, they are put in practice. So we can understand everyone, or we are there for fraternity, for dialogue, we stand for that. But then what about living that? In our daily life, but not only in that, living this when there are situations that harm population, uh, when there are strategic interests, economic interests that move, and not dialogue, not fraternity. And so sometimes the risk is that dialogue is just for my own people and not for the others, and not for, let's say, the enemies of the moment. I still remember there was a session at the UN where we were talking about all the situation after October 7 and which way affected Palestinian people and Israeli people. Decision of the governments or some sort of governments from both sides were affecting the population. And so there was someone standing just for one group and the other one standing for the others. And then there was a lady that lost her son on October 7, saying, "Do you want to give a color to the suffering? Do you want to give a side to the tears?" So that's why dialogue and fraternity are relevant, but needs to be inclusive, needs to be considered always the other side. I still remember, no, also for my profession, no, interviewing people that apparently they are from a different side. I remember there was a day, a boy, no, protesting against migration in front of the UN in New York. And I was so surprised because this guy was a Latino. And I said, "You are not from the US?" And he said, "Yes, my parents are from Mexico." So you are an immigrant and you are protesting against immigrants? And he said, "I'm not protesting against people, but I'm protesting against a system that made me suffer a lot." And I don't want to see other migrants coming in this country and suffer like I did. Changed completely my perspective. It was not on the other side. There was a suffering there that needed to be understood. So that's why the approach in dialogue and fraternity, at least my approach, is something that I learned from Chiara Lubig. She was also the inspirational leader for the value of Humanity NGO, of the Focolare Movement that is hosting the World Week, the United World Week. She taught me to look at the others always as a gift. We know that sometimes when we receive a gift, it's not the best one for us. Maybe it's not the gift that we would love to receive. But in any case, it's meaningful because that gift took effort for the person to choose it, effort, and to give us. So, but that gift, in any case, is a connection. So, what about to look everyone like a possibility to learn? I interview in my career people that are victims and also people that are responsible for the suffering. And then you see that it's important to understand, not to justify, but to understand, to have a complete picture. And I think the dialogue is authentic when we provide this kind of space. And I think also your week, the work that faith-based organization and not only them are doing at the UN is giving space to the several voices that are populating our planet. Doesn't mean that we are not recognizing injustice. There are many, and we suffer for that. We suffer and we stand for the victims in every side.
Thank you so much, Maddie. And you follow several field projects supporting the most vulnerable populations around the world. Can you tell us a bit more about them?
I think that our support is on, I want to say, there are several ways not to support the vulnerable population. From our side is to stand for them, to make, for example, at the UN, the representative aware. And I would suggest not only the representative at the UN, but it's a responsibility of each of us to make our political institution and social institution aware of. I was in a conversation with a friend of mine in the last weeks about the situation in the US related to migrants. And also all the religious leaders stood for them, but not only them, also many politicians. And my suggestion was, what about if we write to this politician to encourage them to care more and more about the vulnerable population? And then what about to write to other politicians that are supporting dialogue instead of bombing? So in this way, this is our part to encourage the people that are doing right and sometimes feel alone, that they are not alone. There are many that are at their side, even though they are silent most of the time. It's not time to stay silent, not at this moment. So I support several projects, but you need to support also people and projects. I support people. I love to connect people. And this is also part of my job. Just 2 days ago, we had a meeting with the team of Humanity, and one of us is working in a project in Malawi But there are many, many problems in that country at the moment. So, you know, the NGO is supporting education and formation of teachers, but then there is a lack of connection with the government. In which way I can help? I know people that are very committed in the field. Let's connect them together. Or, for example, I remember also a call for help coming from Lebanon when the economic crisis disrupted completely the country before of this conflict, of this war that is adding more suffering. And there was the possibility to connect entrepreneurs from the US with entrepreneurs from Lebanon, start a conversation, build a project, build a strategic plan to recover a little bit, for example, small business in the country. So there are several ways, but if we look at ourselves as an instrument of dialogue, that nothing is happening without reason, but that God is guiding us and is making us instrument, his hands, his soul, his love for humanity. Is not something coming just from heaven, in something that we can be instrumental. So that's why, for example, in January, there was a meeting of the Committee on Finance for Development, and they were looking for some microfinance project. So it was the occasion to share a microfinance project sponsored by the Focolare Movement in Syria. And we provide voice and space to a small experience that was inspirational for many. And it's not just that we are assisting, we are supporting people in a difficult moment and help them to flourish and be independent in the future. And this is also our strategy.
Thank you so much. And also thank you for the reminder that we, in our own small way, we can do something. And you have proposed the establishment of a weekly youth forum at the United Nations within the framework of the Pact of the Future. How do you see the role of young people?
Young people are amazing. You know, there is already a forum of 3 days. It's the ECOSOC Youth Forum in April at the UN in New York. And when you go there, you see that the young people own the UN. But it's not enough. It's not enough. So we need more than 3 days. Maybe we need a week. Maybe we need something in which not only representative from states, but also from NGOs can bring their voice there. And for example, now during this youth forum, having young people that are marginalized, that no one is considering because of physical disabilities, because they live not in a part of the world that in this moment is so relevant in the economic field. So, or young people that don't have opportunities. So was not my idea. We were there with a group of them during a youth forum 2 years ago. And this guy, 20 years old, they say, it's not enough 3 days. We need to have a month, like for the women. You know that in March there is a month dedicated to women and education and gender equality and everything else. And it's amazing. No? You see the UN so vibrant. And what about having the same with youth? But you know, I think that a big, big step for the UN is having include a document in the Pact of the Future about the responsibility for future generation. So we need to insist, but not like because they are not aware of. But you know, sometimes we think the young people are still too young. I don't think so. They are not too young. They are part with everyone, with all the generation of bringing in bringing our world ahead, in the sense of human rights, in the sense of caring for our planet, in the sense of future jobs. So they are with. They don't need to be babysitting, no, from the adults, but they are part. They are living the same challenges. So when there is, I don't know, an earthquake, an economic crisis, this is not affecting also young people, or they are living in a different world. A war is not affecting them, and why only adults have the right to stay at the table? And we don't listen to their voice, their hopes, their suffering, the creativity. And I think this is when I suggest this presence needs to be constructive, not in opposition. That's why I use more and more with, not against, with. And so this is really relevant. We are there with you. We are there with the government. We are there with, to build, to build, to build. For sure, to build according to the values of the Chart of the United Nations, to denounce if we are betraying that chart, according to the value of each religion, of everyone is a believer in a way or in another. So let's build with. And this is the beauty. So my proposal came from a conversation, and I hope that maybe in 10 years, this can be the legacy of also of United World Week for the UN. And remember, the UN is the house of people, and youth are part of the people in the world. So they are not different ones.
That's very true. And final question, you've already mentioned a little bit about it, but in your opinion, do initiatives like the United World Week make sense in this context? And can they contribute something more to the journey towards fraternity?
I think in this moment we need every drop possible of hope. We are thirsty for that, thirsty of meaningful experiences, testimonies, possibilities to look at the world with another lens, possibility to touch real project that makes the difference. We need to hear voice of real change makers, voices that don't put aside the spiritual part of every human being. They don't put aside marginalized people. So that's why I think now the United World Week is really like an expo of dialogue and fraternity, where we are not just talking, but show there is a possibility. Okay, we know we have these wars everywhere in the world, but there are also many spots of peace, many lights here and there. And we are here to show these lights and to show that it's possible, that there are not only dark side in our humanity, but there are lights. So let's, I want to say, light on many, many lights, lighten on many, many lights in the world. So that's why it's meaningful to have it. But don't stay close. Offer this week to others, open to others, open to others. Yeah. I
No, thank you so much, Maddie, for being here with us and also taking your time to be able to participate in this podcast. And for me, it was really inspiring and truly wonderful to also hear your experiences, but also giving us a call to action, not only during the United World Week, but also throughout and also as the youth. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. And so I will follow you at
Thank
distance,
you.
but for sure, yes, yes, yes. And so let's let's do it together, no? Being these small lights everywhere, in every situation, no? That we are going to live. Yeah, there are always possibilities. So let's move forward together with great faith and hope.
Thank you so much, Maddie, again, and bye.
Bye, 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 everyone.